Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the situation with illegal immigration in Italy. Now, you probably remember sort of towards the latter part of last year, the centre right, I mean, they're not right-wing radicals as the globalist media portray them, but the centre right coalition government came to office in Italy with Giorgia Meloni. I doubt she's even 5 foot tall. This tiny little diminutive woman who's the new prime minister. You couldn't imagine someone who looks less like a prime minister than her. But anyway, she was the leader of the biggest party, and she talked really tough out on the the election trail and on the hustings. Talking about how she was going to push back against all the globalist influences and she was going to stop illegal immigration and talk really big and tough on that. And so she, the coalition won quite a decent majority, which, by the way, is rare in Italian politics. Typically, it's very fractured, and these very uncertain coalitions get cobbled together. So the victory for the right wing coalition or centre right, they're not right wing, was quite substantial and almost unusual in Italian politics. So that's a reflection, I think, of the feeling of and the concerns of the people, that finally there was a politician who was addressing their concerns. And nobody in the Western world, nobody wants globalization other than the globalist goons and their elite flunkies. Nobody wants it. It's causing a big reduction in living standards for all white people, and the globalists know it. The globalists know it's unpopular. The globalists know that they're not going to get it across the line. It will not receive popular support at all. So, in spite of all the efforts to portray anyone that disagrees with the globalist project as a Nazi. I guess, the globalists are lusting over the day when the baby boom generation dies off and there's no, people over the age who today would be over the age of, say, mid-50s. When they all die off, then there'll only be the woke college kids left, and they're all going to vote. Vote for the global, vote for their own destruction and demise, gleefully and willingly doing it. I may be destroying my standard of living. I may be destroying my society. I may be destroying everything, but at least black lesbians are getting equality. So, the globalists are lusting for that day. But coming back to the Italian politics, if you look at all the major promises and undertakings that Giorgia Meloni, who I thought was quite an effective speaker, and again talked big and tough about pushing back against the globalization project, supporting families and not having any of this LGBTQ plus nonsense, which is only being used to destabilize and demoralize Western society. The globalists don't give a fuck about those people. It's just a device to destabilize Western society, and a very critical device as well. This is one of the reasons why they're so annoyed with Vladimir Putin. He won't allow that nonsense in Russia, so that's when he's got to go. If he won't let us use our favoured weapons of social destabilization, we've got to get the fuck rid of that guy. So why is Meloni not Giorgia Meloni not delivered? Now the media portrayed her as Mussolini in a skirt, far right. Fascist, and I was just reading a bunch of articles earlier on before I did this vid, and in the media online, the media articles online, every fucking paragraph has either far right, Mussolini, fascist in it. There's just a constant attack on and to call them far right is beyond absurd. But anyway, why has the illegal immigration, as an example, is more now? Like if you could take the corresponding period last year to now, the migration is considerably higher. The illegal migration is considerably higher. Now, I don't know how many ostensibly legal migrants they're bringing in. over that time. I haven't seen the numbers there, but the illegal migration's increased. Now, the source of the migration seems to be switching, so it suggests that the globalists are playing a game here. There does appear to be an extra clampdown on the main source of illegal migration, which is boats coming across from Libya to Italy or to one of the Italian islands in the south of, in the Mediterranean Sea to the south of Italy. So that was the main source last year. You could say that 90% of the illegals were coming there. Now that's dropped, from what I can tell, at least that's dropped quite considerably. But now the international people trafficking cabals, which are globalist supported, now the boats are coming from Turkey and around that Turkish coast, refugee camps over in that side of the Mediterranean, in places like Lebanon and that sort of thing. So this is it would seem this is a globalist tactic. So if the Italian government's sort of managing to choke off illegal immigration in one spot, they just simply switch to another, and it's a longer journey and so on. And I'm sure they have to stop a few times along the way to get supplies and water and food and so on. So it requires more of the people smuggler come globalist infrastructure to make that happen, given it's a much longer journey, but they're still doing it. But what it means is that the globalists are succeeding in bringing people in just from other areas. So if one place is stopped, they'll just switch to another, and that seems to be what's happening here. But what strikes me as odd is just how unable the government seems to be to stop it. They, if you look how quickly the globalists move once they're in office, they move with lightning speed. And they go, fan out in all directions, changing laws here, making decrees, using courts to stymie any opposition. That they're out there. They've got the street marches on demand, getting out. They're a very slick, organised effort. Yet the people in opposition to them seem somehow strangely feeble. Almost pathetically ineffective. They say, there's nothing we can do, it's the law. Whereas the globalists don't give a flying fuck about the law. They just go out and do it. And to stop them will require a similarly robust response. So I don't know whether Giorgia Meloni's government is trying to do things, but the public service is slow walking it or undermining it, because there'll be a lot of globalist people in the public service. Well, maybe they're being stymied or delayed and frustrated there. I don't know. Maybe some of the regional governments are refusing to, not openly, but again, slow walking it and just obfuscating and dealing with it, tying things up in courts and that sort of stuff. Maybe they're delaying it there, again, like they did with Trump. So it's a bit hard to say, and just looking at the articles, it's very hard to get a beat on this, because every media article from the mainstream media, again, always is portraying her and her government as Nazis and everyone else as the good guys. So it's rather difficult to say, but it doesn't matter the cause or the reason. The fact is the governor Giorgia Meloni's been very ineffective. It's been a couple of things they've done, but really nothing's really been successful. The larger NGO boats that are being used, they seem to have been successful in frustrating and hampering their efforts to bring illegals into Italy on the basis that they're rescuing people at sea, which is complete nonsense, of course. They rescue people 10 miles off the coast of Libya, but then have to travel 100 miles to get to the nearest Italian place, whereas any sensible person would obviously take them back to 10 miles. So clearly that whole NGO, we're rescuing people, is an utter scam in the Mediterranean. But when it comes to the smaller boats that may do short distance hops around the Mediterranean coasts, there the Italians don't seem to have a system to stop them, or again they're being frustrated or something like that. So, but it's not just in the illegal immigration. It seems almost in every area, as far as I can tell, that the Giorgia Meloni and the government were talking. We're gonna fix this, and we're gonna do this, and we're gonna do that. They've achieved almost nothing or very little. Now maybe they're bickering amongst themselves over the wording of legislation, but they are incredibly ineffective. Unlike when a pro-globalist government comes in and they hit the ground with running at high speed, and again, as I mentioned a moment ago, they fan out in all directions, getting things done, putting the globalist project in place. But those who oppose them just seem uselessly ineffective, and it's a constant source of irritation and annoyance for many, myself included, is why is the pushback so fucking ineffective? Now, apart from telling lies and this sort of thing, the politicians, certainly as in Australia, where I've got sort of a closer view on things and a more detailed view, and know people who can give me the inside dirt and that sort of stuff. But I'm just thinking of the politicians. One politician says we're gonna stop illegal immigration, and we're gonna really clamp down, and we'll decide who comes here. And they talk big and tough. Now they did do a decent job, by the way, of clamping down on the illegals, which certainly stopped the people smugglers and folks like that. But then they ramped up the legal migration. They really ramped it up, turbocharged it. So whereas 50,000 illegals can be stopped from coming, but instead of that, over 100,000 legals were coming in. So now, when that started to get politically sticky, they then said, "Oh no, look, we're going to do something about this. We're going to make sure that everybody who comes here to Australia, every immigrant, speaks good English and have skills that are needed in the economy." And they've got jobs to go to, and we're gonna make sure that and higher standards. We're gonna have a point system, but that was nonsense. They didn't do anything like that at all. They applied that rigorous point system to a very small number of people, and everyone else could just walk in the door not being able to speak a lick of English. There are all sorts of scams and workarounds for the people smuggler type gangs to bring out illiterate rural peasants to Australia to do all sorts of donkey work, from floor sweeping to dishwashing to painting nails in beautician salons and this sort of thing. And people are illiterate in their own language, let alone fucking English. So all these people could still come in. The government made all sorts of noises. We're not going to do. But hundreds of thousands of people came in not being able to speak English and so on. So there was really no effort made to stop it. They were just saying things to say to the populace, look, don't worry about it. We've got it under control. We're going to take stern steps. But in fact, nothing of the sort happened. They just pursued the globalist project with the same aggressiveness as they were doing previously, bringing in masses of illiterate brown and black peasants. Now they could change the thing. Well, we've got a moral responsibility to bring in all these illiterate fucking peasants who hate us and hate white people and who just want to bribe everybody and have shootouts in the street. We've got a moral responsibility to do it. And you disagree with that? You fucking damn Nazi. So this is the playbook really all over the Western world. They'll try and assure the population who don't want all this. They don't want this mass migration, whether it be legal or not. They just don't want it. Nobody wants it. It lowers living standards. It for everybody. It lowers living standards, and it creates levels of crime and so on that mean the quality of life declines rapidly. Now, the quality of life for the illiterate peasant coming from the farm in the middle of nowhere, or certainly economically, that may improve when they come to the West. But for everyone else, it's a downhill slide. So came back to Meloni here. Maybe the globalists have offered her, the waterfront mansion and all the other bits and pieces, and promised her children fantastically well-paid, prestigious jobs and so on. I don't know. I'm not suggesting it is or isn't, but for some reason, her government is unable to push back successfully against the globalist project, and illegal migration is obviously one of them. Now, I just want to talk a bit about whether it be from Libya or elsewhere, that there's a lot of refugee camps dotted around the North African coast and down amongst the Western Mediterranean coastlines, Lebanon and around there, Turkey and so on. So in Libya alone, it's claimed by the Italian authorities that there's about 700,000 illegal small over Africa and so on that have gathered in Libya and brought there by the people smuggling cabals and gangs for a passage to Italy, and then they move on through Europe and go, some try to get to England and Germany and so on, wherever the welfare state is the most generous. Now, again, these are people who are illiterate in their own language, but somehow they seem superbly well versed in what they have to say and do and where they have to go. So clearly, it's an organised racket. There's nothing organic about it at all. Nothing. Now. The Italian authorities claim there's almost 700,000 people in the camps in Libya wanting to get to the west, or Italy in this case. The authorities, if you can even call it that, in Libya, given it's sort of divided up amongst various warlords and goons and so on, they say it's closer to 600,000. The NGOs and the United Nations, who are the main part of the people smuggling cabal, they insist it's half that or less. So it's hard to say how many they are, but the low numbers are 300,000, the high numbers are into the 700,000. So you can take your pick in between that. Now, the media portrays the people in these camps and elsewhere. They artificially claim they're nearly all women and children, where they're not. There's hardly any women and children. And they claim that all these people are desperate and desperately escaping the most terrible circumstances. And if they have to be returned to their own countries or have to go anywhere else other than the West, only the West will protect them from being raped, tortured, beaten, and having to live in corrupt, evil conditions and so on. I mean, it's the chutzpah of making those sort of claims. Why don't these high-minded moral superiors, why don't they do something fixing the situation in those countries? Why is the only solution ever to bring these illiterate peasants to the first world? That's somehow going to fix everything. Of course it's not. It's just part of the globalist fucking scam. So now there's a few things that sort of interest me here. That it used to be about $5,000 a few years ago to get a people smuggler passage, say to get you from France to England, or Libya to Italy and so on, about $5,000. Apparently the price has gone up, and there's no shortage of people allegedly willing to pay it anyway. So it's $8,000 now. Now we're supposed to believe that an illiterate, penniless peasant from some shithole country where the average wage is $500 a year, which is a much lower cost of living, by the way. So what a lot of people fall in the trap. I've noticed that schoolgirls in Australia, $500 a year. Oh no, I couldn't live on that. But that's not what the cost of living is there. The cost of living is vastly different in those countries. So $500 actually goes a long way. And if you're getting paid $1,500 US a year, you're almost middle class at that rate. So if you look at $8,000 passage, that means that somebody could live for 5 years, a middle class lifestyle in some of these African shitholes can live for 5 years, a middle class lifestyle, or they would spend 5 years of costs to go to some sort of refugee camp, travel quite a long distance, go to refugee camp, wait at that refugee camp until the people smugglers are ready to take, and then they can go over. So now that's a very high risk gig for that amount of money, given how far that money would go in the country they came from. So this is a very important point to consider. Why would people who've got that sort of money take that level of risk and travel that far away? Remember, these people have never even left their village in their lives, let alone people who've left the country or traveled or have any sophisticated understanding of the world. These are people who've never been out of the village, who've never, if every morning of their lives they've got up, they've had their wider family and everyone around them there to see. But suddenly they're just going to leave all that behind and get that sort of money. Now, some people say that, or some commentators say, well, look, what they've done is the whole village has got together to gather the money. The women, the girls have been acting as prostitutes. They've done everything they can, get the money together and send the most likely young man of the village over to the first world in the hope that he gets citizenship. Then he brings the whole village over into the West. That's the kind of mentality. One that, by the way, is encouraged by United Nations and globalist agitators. Now, given the amount of people who've been getting turned back recently, the NGOs are claiming this is an infringement on the human rights of the people to travel illegally and pay people smugglers and so on. I mean, again, the chutzpah of that. So they're now paying $8,000 to be smuggled into Italy. So if they get turned back, the people smugglers don't give a refund. What they do is that if you want to have another stab at going to the West illegally, then you have to pay another $8,000. So and these people therefore some of them have to wait for a year. It's alleged some of them have to wait for a year in Libya in these camps in supposedly deplorable conditions where they're getting beaten, tortured, and raped every fucking day. And until the people in the village can raise the next $8,000 to send. Now, in a corrupt basket case country where nothing works or functions, how can where you go from one basket case country, you get the money together and you send it through the banking system to the next shithole third world basket case country where the person is able to draw out the cash and walk around with it somehow safe from being robbed or now that's a pretty slick banking system. That's a lot of money to move through the banking system in those sort of countries. So clearly the banks, most of them American, could clearly intercept that. They know who these people are. They could identify the people smugglers in seconds if they wanted to. They can go and identify everyone who's in. We want to know. The banks have to tell us who was in Washington, D.C. on January 6th. That's no problem. We can do that because they're fucking insurrectionist fucking Nazis. But somehow all this money moving around, a lot of it, moving around in third world countries, somehow the American banking system that's so on the ball for insurrectionists somehow is totally unable to track all this money, where it's going, who's paying it, because they could intercept the people smugglers and the people who are trying to pay the people smugglers. They could intercept that and identify and make a list of these people without any trouble at all. But somehow they don't seem to want to do that. Bit like when BLM is organising to do a riot, somehow the FBI just doesn't know. I don't know. We just can't tell. There are laws against spying on citizens. We can't do that. But if another group wants to have a march against illegal immigration, something like, the FBI is bang, they're onto it. They've been watching it for a moment. They've infiltrated it with agitators and Asian provocateurs, and they're right on the spot. So clearly the mechanisms exist to stop this people smuggling and mass migration, but because it's a globalist thing and what the globalists want, then they're not applying those mechanisms. Now, I'm just I made a couple of notes here. Now, in Libya, there's various warring factions, and the LNA is an example. The Libyan National Army, I think it's called the LNA. They control most of the areas where the ports of embarkation are. So they're clearly making big bucks in bribery and corruption here to facilitate and assist the people smuggling. So when you look at the scale of this people smuggling operation, if you look at these people can be making more than $1 million a week. The people smugglers more than $1 million a week just doing transit. So this is some serious money, and that's just one port to one point of delivery. Like if you look at all of the ports of embarkation for the illegals and all of the various points of delivery around the Mediterranean, I mean, these people would be making, just in the Mediterranean alone, well over $100 million a year. And that's just in the transit fees. The camps that they're in and they're staying in, they have to pay bribes and all sorts of things there. Any food or stuff that you want access to in these these states where everything's broken down in terms of proper administration, and you've got to pay bribes left, right, and centre. So the whole cost of the operation is massive. Now, some of these NGOs, these globalist NGOs, are paying bribes to these warlords and to the people smugglers in order to sort of maintain, if you like, the logistical machine of moving people around illegally. But it just goes to sort of indicate the extent of the corruption and the amount of people that are making big bucks out of this. And so just sort of coming back to the Maloney government here. They've been unable to stop illegal immigration and have also been ineffective in most of their other, in fact, I think it's from what I can see, all of their other claims and promises. And so have they been got to and compromised by the globalists? Has Maloney suddenly got drunk on power and believes that she can be the darling of the EU establishment, and so on? Those issues that have come up. But clearly the globalists have been successful, for whatever the reason, whatever means they're using. They've been successful in stopping that government from effectively pushing back against the globalist project. And so whether maybe that'll change soon, but it just indicates, to me at least, the extent of the power of the globalists, that anyone they can't control, they can prevent and frustrate and stymie, and they've got all the pieces in place to do that. You've been with Tassus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.